Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to your Rattlecast, with the biggest freewheeling live streaming poetry podcast on the planet in your ears and on your laptops. Our guest for episode number 341 is our very own Jeff Stumpo, a very familiar face. We're looking forward to getting to know him better and check out his new book. These are the waterfalls in my head. We're also going to unveil our new prompt poet of the month for the month of April. So sit tight and we'll do that soon. But before we begin, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been a continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all this, and we do so much because we love poetry. I know you do too, so please do click on the like button and share. Make sure you subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, leave reviews on iTunes or Spotify. I mean, there's so much content here on the YouTube channel. Make sure you're spreading the word, getting more people watching. That would always help. Now, we're going to start out like we always do with our Poets Respond poet of this week, and it's another familiar face. Alejandro is right up there with the poets who are in Poets Respond the most over the, 12 years now we've been doing it. I don't even know how many poems, 18 or 20 or so, Alejandro Escudé has had, but a former journalist and great poet. Those two go together very well, and he had another great poem this week about a current event. Here he is, Alejandro Escudé. Hey, Alex, how you doing?
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. Always a pleasure, Alex. And it is. I love, getting poems here because you always take some news story and have an interesting take on it. And this one, well, why don't you tell everybody what this was about?
Well, it was about the latest assassination attempt. It's kind of funny to say latest. Yeah, so I just, like everybody else, saw it on TV and I had some thoughts about it. And it's interesting to see what everybody, kind of all the pundits say. And I read about it and things like that. So something always calls to me if it has some kind of something new that I've never seen before.
Yeah. Well, it is strange how habituated we are to it now. It's just like, oh yeah, like it was vaguely a news story. I watched the clip, but that's about all the thought that goes into that when it would have been shocking a while ago. So what a world we live in. Why don't you go ahead and read this poem?
Okay, it's called Another Assassination Attempt on Television. It's in fragments, like a postmodern play, and you see the women crawling after the guarded men. And you see a few continue to eat their food, stealing wine bottles. Certain chaos comes no matter how much protection drops from the sky. The cops stand like cops, their heads swiveling like iguanas. And it's interesting to see these powerful beings reduced to something unrehearsed, like scattering pigeons. And then it comes to you, the thought. The president is. His body capable of stiffening as a wooden plank, the assassin the same as every other assassin, the shotgun the same as a pistol, the horse tethered outside the theater, the hotel room reserved, the silence of the book depository, the armored car clean, the tipped ballroom seats, the fold-out tables, the jump cut logic of the killer's loopy thoughts, unscrambled, then scrambled again, like a voice crackling from history's muddy shallows.
Yeah, such a great little tight poem there, Alex. And the thing that sold me on it really was that the line about these powerful beings reduced to something unrehearsed, like scattering pigeons. And that there was something just watching the video that was really fascinating about it. And I had no idea what it was until I read your poem. And I was like, oh, that's what it is. Like, it's the fact that, like, you so rarely see any of these people doing anything unscripted.
Right.
And here they're, like you said, they're stealing wine bottles and some finishing their food and some the people's it's just so strange that the people's reactions were the most fascinating part about it,
Yeah, their facial expressions and everything.
Yeah. Well, really cool poem. Thanks again for bringing the news into poetry. It's always a valuable service you do, and also you do teaching school. Good luck on the rest of your school semester, and take care, Alex. It's always great to see you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Take care.
That was Alejandro Escudé with Sunday's poem or today's poem, I guess, because today is Sunday. I forgot about that. Another assassination attempt on television. If you have a poem about current events, all you have to do is go to rattle.com. Up under content, you'll see Poets Respond. Submit your poem by midnight Friday night. We publish at least one poem every Sunday about current events, trying to keep poetry a part of the international dialogue. Really important thing that we do at Rattle. So make sure you get your poems in. We get about 150 or so on average. On a busy news week, we might get 300 poems. We always get to pick one. Of course, we pay all our poets too, so you get $100 as well. So make sure you get your submissions in. And also, if you don't, sign up to get your poem in your inbox every day. Go to rattle.com. Down at the bottom, you'll see the email sign up, and you'll get poems like Alejandro's in your inbox at about, it depends what your time zone is, but 5:30 some places, 3:30 other places, etc. But you get your poem in the morning, so make sure you sign up there. And we're going to take a quick break and go to our main guest, Jeff Stumpo. So sit tight, and we'll be right back with a whole lot more poetry.
Unmuted myself.
And we're back. Thanks so much for your patience. Like I said, today's guest is Jeff Stumpo. Jeff's the author of the full-length collection, These Are the Waterfalls in My Head, which just came out, winner of the 2026 Granite State Poetry Prize, and, well, just came out from Yas Press. That's the University of New Hampshire. He has published 5 chapbooks of poetry, mostly through 7 Kitchens Press, including Against Itself Cannot Stand, along with a spoken word album. His other honors include the 2024 Subnivean Award for Poetry and runner-up for the 2023 Joy Harjo Prize. I'm a former bookstore owner, an adjunct professor, and a slam poet who founded and hosted a slam in Central Texas for 5 years. Jeff has been a featured performer at some of the oldest slam venues in the U.S., and he lives in New Hampshire now. And here he is, our very own Jeff Stumpo, a familiar face. Great to see you for a full segment, Jeff.
Hi, everybody. Weird to be on this side of things.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm glad to have you here. And, you appeared with some great poems on the prompt lines. And I was always more curious to learn more about you. I think a lot of people already in the comments are saying they are too. So I want to talk more about that, but let's start out with a poem right away. And I think the first poem you're going to read is your opening poem from the new book.
Yeah, because it kind of sets the stage for what's going to come. Thematically and so forth. So we're just going to dive into this. And something to note right now, and we can talk about it later if you want, no pressure, is the fact that there are no titles to the poems in this book. Tonight you are washing your hands in the bathroom sink when your reflection reaches out and grabs you by the wrist. You stumble back so that you can't be pulled into the mirror, but that's not its goal. It wants out. It's crouching on its sink, slinking through the space where the mirror was. You see its home and wish you hadn't. There are dead vines extending into your world, blood flowers blooming dustily. Everything is covered in thorns, even the you that wants you gone. You are trying to wake up, but you've always known you were the most frightening thing in your life.
Yeah, so that's the first poem we're going to read. It starts, "Tonight you are washing your hands." And that's from Jeff's new book, "These Are the Waterfalls in My Head." And really, really cool formatting. And we'll get to talking about this more. Let's let that sit a little bit and talk about you, Jeff, because everybody is curious to learn more about you. So how did you start getting into poetry? I know you have a slam background. You did that. You founded a slam, I think it said, in Central Texas, which is too bad, we moved now, but it would have been nice to be able to drive up and do a poetry slam with you back in the day. But yeah, how did you get into poetry? What inspired you, and how did you get on that trajectory?
Can I give a two-part answer to the question? Yeah. So there's the kind of writing that you do when you're a little kid and you're just like swinging on the swings and you're making up rhymes in time with the rhythm of going back and forth. And then not really touching poetry again for years and getting to college and taking a creative writing class and then taking another creative writing class and then another creative writing class and being exposed to some really good poets that way, both the ones teaching. The two professors in particular I had, one is Christine Hume, who's now at Eastern Michigan, and one was a guy named John O'Leary, who's unfortunately deceased now, who is an Irishman, who had Paradise Lost memorized, among other things. And they gave me a postmodern take on poetry and a sort of capital R romantic take on poetry. And those two collided in my head. And I just kind of kept writing from that point. I was exposed to slam in the late 90s, early 2000s through things like the documentary Slam Nation and going to open mics and so forth. And I was interested in poetry on the page and poetry on the stage and not necessarily having those things combined, like being able to read your work well was important. Mm-hmm. But when I was doing things for slam, I was trying to do stuff that literally could not appear on a page. There would be sign language involved, or I'd be going through multiple personas and cycling their accents and things. And on the page, I was trying to largely do visual work. Mm-hmm. That's part one. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
Part two is in 2017, I had a stroke that wasn't a stroke. My mother-in-law came over one day and found me on the couch and my left side was drooping.
Oh, wow.
And they took me to the ER. And after a bunch of tests, the attending neurologist goes, "Okay, you didn't technically have a stroke, but for all intents and purposes you did because you are so stressed that your brain convinced your body you were having one."
Oh, wow.
And I had to stop teaching, tried to hold down a couple of part-time jobs, was unable to do so, and I stopped writing for 5 years. I did not write. I did not send out work. I could not be creative. And then in 2022, I started trying to write down nightmares that I had had as a therapeutic gesture. So I was writing these prose poems, taking my dreams and externalizing them from myself so that I could deal with them in a more healthy manner. And that's what became this. I wrote like 120 prose poems in a year, narrowed it down to 65 over the next couple of years. And since then, I obviously haven't published other books, but I've written a book-length manuscript every year since then.
Wow. Was it the writing dream diary? Was that because you were writing before and then you took a break and weren't writing? Was that part of, like, how did that spark becoming poems? Because it's a very different thing, to be writing and trying to, as you said, externalize your dreams and sort of make sense of them probably. But that's a very different thing than having a poem, and making some kind of meaning out of it and having some kind of arc to it and all that kind of stuff. So how did that spark writing actual poems?
And I am with you 100%, even down to the language. And part of the language I'm going to latch on to, because I've used it myself, is the idea of making meaning. I'm not somebody who ascribes to the idea that dreams have intrinsic meaning. I'm not a Jungian. or various other dream journals you can go pick up in Barnes and Noble. I'm of the opinion that the work you do to make meaning, to assign meaning to dreams, is where the poetry emerges and where the actual therapy emerges. But yeah, there's a difference between writing something that is good for you and writing something that is good for a reader. And as the poems went on, initially that took the form of writing in epiphanies that I hadn't had at the time because I was, thrashing in my sleep and freaking out when I woke up. Being able to go back to those moments and afterwards say, oh, like, here's this thing that I can say makes sense out of this. And not everyone in the book is going to have that, but there are moments where I'm like, okay, let's make sense out of this. And then I took it further and said, okay, what if I take these hopes and fears that people I know, that I care about have had, and I turn those into dreamscapes such that the dream logic applies, but it's their daily lived experiences just through this surreal filter. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely does. And so, just trying to understand a little bit more, did the discovery happen in the writing process later as you were shaping and editing these down, or is it like looking back? So you're writing it as a dream diary, then looking back, rereading it. Did you have those sort of epiphanies and understandings, or stuff you learned along the way in the time since you wrote them? It's an interesting writing process, so I'm curious how that's applied.
I want to say within the first month of doing it is when I started to go, okay, I need this to be about more than just myself. I need somebody else to find a way into these because that makes it more than just expressing pain. And so I would definitely say within the first month is when I started looking to like come up with epiphanies based on things. And then within, I'd say 3 or 4 months is when I started looking even further outside of my own experience to make dreams out of realities. And then the next couple of years, I was largely writing other things, but when I started to edit, it was, okay, how am I not repeating myself too often? Because like at 120 poems about dreams, you're going to cover the same material at some points. And actually, in that, I'm going to specifically call out help from Ellen Benedetti, who read a draft of the manuscript and noticed that I was clumping things too often thematically. Like there's poems that have to do with the police. And I'd have like 5 of those in a row. And she's going that like, it makes me think that it's going to keep going and then it doesn't, but dreams don't work that way. Your dreams every night, even if you have repeating dreams, they vary more. So vary your book more. And I did, and it turned out much better for her help that way.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting. Let's hear another poem, Jeff.
Okay. Let's actually go to one of the police ones. So I'm on page 17 here.
Okay.
And this is from my friend Crystal, and I'll explain why afterwards. Tonight you are on a dark back road, your headlights the only sign of civilization. You pass signs you can't read. The road never curves, yet you can't see more than a few yards ahead. Before you know it, you've been pulled over, the red and blue flashes destroying the sanctity of your mirrors. A deer walks up to your window on its hind legs, knocks with a hoof. You're trying to explain that you haven't done anything when its face splits open and the skull drips blood as it orders you to get out. There is a deer in your back seat staring at you with empty eye sockets. There is a pain in your heart like an antler. You're not going to make it home. You're as good as a skull on a wall.
Yeah, and that was another of these dream poems from Jeff Stumpo from his new book, These Are the Waterfalls in My Head. And
if I can say real quick, that's for Crystal because one, she has a fear of deer, like that is her phobia. And two, she was pulled over, and I'm not exaggerating this, when we lived near each other in Texas, going to grad school together. She was pulled over just about 30 times in 2 years for driving while black,
Hmm.
to the point that literally at times she was told, I pulled you over because you looked angry.
Hmm.
Um, so,
Yeah. Well, so for the dreams here, how did it end up working? Because I think you're trying to cure yourself of these nightmares, right? Was it effective in that? And because I've had I've had times where I've had recurring dreams myself. Like a recurring nightmare, and there's sort of a way, I don't know, that you can solve a dream and then not have it anymore. So I'm wondering if you've had any experience at all with that.
um, number one, for better or worse, it wasn't an effort to cure myself
Hmm.
of having the dreams. I've got enough other stuff going on that just writing them down wasn't going to do that. I'm also schizophrenic and I have PTSD. And so there are medications that I'm on to, in the daytime, not have me experience hallucinations, and at nighttime, not
Mm.
have dreams.
Yeah.
And therapy is good. Therapy gets you a good part of the way. And I mean that both with sitting in a room with someone, and also the act of writing and creating is a productive thing to be doing. It's not always sufficient. In my case, it was not.
Hmm.
Um, and I sort of knew that. And so this was not an attempt to cure myself, which is now me trying to disagree with you, because I do think that that is a valuable skill. Um, I am a lucid dreamer, but I don't control what my subconscious is doing in my dreams.
Hmm.
So like I'm in charge of myself in a dream. I have at times been able to make myself fly. I'm making decisions, but the subconscious is always there going, wait, but what if I do this to screw with you
Hmm.
tomorrow night? I'm going to give you the same dream, but when you think that you've got it figured out, I'm going to throw a monkey wrench in it and do something slightly different that means you still don't win.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm. Wow. I mean, that's very much, cinematic in the way that feels. There are a lot of movies that are like that in a frightening, frustrating way, I imagine. Um,
yeah.
did you always lucid dream? That's one thing I'm curious about. I had my daughter, when she was 5 or so. I mentioned, I don't know, she said something about wanting to fly, and I sort of mentioned what lucid dreaming was, and she got very interested in it for a while. And I told her how to do it, those techniques of like touching a wall and then saying, if am I awake or asleep, that kind of thing. I don't know if you're
hmm
familiar with that, the different processes of noticing things in your day, so you notice them in the dreams, so you recognize that. Anyway, she like mastered it in a little while, and then was like telling me about her dream adventures, flying and making whatever world she wanted. And then the really interesting thing is, after a little while of this, I asked her, later if she was still doing that, and she said no, she stopped because she wasn't getting any rest. And it was like the lucidness is what, like, she would wake up tired as if she had this
It's
big
so
adventure.
exhausting. I'm sorry
Yeah.
for cutting you off.
No, I'm curious. Yeah, I'm curious about have you always dreamt like that? And do you feel the same way as she did, that it was like living two lives is actually tiring?
Yeah, I mean, and this has caused harm to people at times, but I've gone like days, weeks, months at a time before I was on an antipsychotic, not knowing if I was asleep or awake,
Hmm.
because in my dreams I was lucid dreaming, and in my daytime hours I was feeling things that were not actually happening.
Hmm.
And it's exhausting, which I think is one reason why twice in my life I've had a full-on psychotic break.
Hmm.
That just it builds and it builds, and you start to lose track of things.
Yeah.
Not to get too down or serious about this, but that's
Hmm.
how it is. Um, the I'm going to tell you two quick things. The first dream I ever remember having, I modified this dream for one of the poems in the book, but in real life, I was in kindergarten, and I had a dream that I was at the front of the classroom, and I was supposed to be presenting on something, and the teacher came up with this big curved blade and cut off the top of my skull and removed it and held a mirror up.
Oh wow.
And instead of one big brain, I had 9 little globe brains orbiting a larger one in the center, like the solar system.
Hmm.
I'm old enough that there would have been 9 circling at that time. And she starts picking them up and like accidentally dropping them on the floor. Um, and that's the first dream I ever remember having. Early on, I started having dreams of flying and then falling. And when I would wake up, I would feel myself fall to the bed and hit it. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm actually flying in my sleep. Am I actually floating?
Mhm.
So one night I piled stuffed animals around myself. And I had the dream. I fell. I felt myself hit the bed and I checked and nothing had been dislodged. And I'm like, okay, like I don't know what the scientific method is as whatever grade school kid I am, but I know that I'm experiencing something that is not real.
Wow.
Uh,
Hmm. Well, that is just fascinating, Jeff. Let's hear another poem.
okay, let's go page 25. Um, this is just one of the surreal ones. It's not necessarily a nightmare, although I'm sure it certainly has nightmarish qualities to it. So on page 25. Tonight you are the means and the ends. You are the bullet riding the firestorm. You are Valkyrie, Reaper, Third Rail. You are centuries of propaganda stuffed into 18 years. You are some small town's exit wound. You are the hand given permission to pull the switch and the electric revelation. You are revelation. You are the Bible pages strewn across the highway, the hotel unbound from earth, the tornado lifting up into the sky as though its work here were done.
Yeah, there's another poem from Jeff Stumpo's new book, These Are the Waterfalls in My Head. And we're looking, Jeff, at the cover, and maybe we should talk about the beautiful way this book's presented now. So you can see the cover,
Yeah.
and Jeff's holding up the full
it's-
thing. And then inside, the cover sort of transforms and becomes these black lines. And all the poems are really beautiful, tight little prose poems with a lot of white space around them. And they emerge through this like dream waterfall thing that's going on in black and white, and you can kind of see through to the next page too. So it's like these poems are drifting in and out of a consciousness too in this way. That's a really, really beautiful. It's like an art object book too. So how do you? And you said to me that you designed the cover yourself.
Yeah,
and then it was someone else's idea to
full
move.
credit to Ashley Halsey for finishing off the design and being able to incorporate that cover element into the interior pages and whatnot. She did a great job with that.
Yeah, and so tell us about the design of this book and why, how it came to be, this cover like this, the waterfall sort of lines image, and how, it's presented in such a sort of luxurious way for a book of poems too.
Okay, so we'll do some how the sausage is made. I hope, yeah, anyway. So when I got word from Danielle Jones at Yas Press that I had won, and she's like, start thinking about, if there's art that you might like for the cover or something like that. And I immediately mocked up a not very good cover design because I don't have like painting skill. I paint miniatures like D&D miniatures, but I can't do like on canvas. But I have a little bit of graphic design skill. And so I threw together, hey, like maybe they could modify what I'm doing here. And she was like, okay, that's fine. And then I sat on it for a few days and I go, oh, like what if the words themselves are the waterfall? Like how can I do that? And I'm playing around in Pixelmator because I refuse to pay for a subscription to Photoshop. And I start doing lines down from the text and lay it out and play with it till I get this design, which feels right. And I wish that I had something more affirmatively art student to say about why it works. But there is something intuitively that people latch onto about it that they go, yes, this feels like the cover of a book of poetry I want to pick up. And we met the editors and the designers and I met and they're like, we're going to make some changes to it. We're going to modify the colors a little bit, but we like this design. We're going to make it work on the back cover. Also, there's this small problem. And I'm like, what is the small problem? And they go, do you really want the poems on the front and back of every page? And having worked with Al Brilliant, who unfortunately is also deceased now, but he was the founder of Unicorn Press back in the 60s, first place to publish Philip Levine's books, things like that. I knew him for a couple of years, and he was a great guy. And I'm like, I know what you're about to say. You're about to tell me that the book is going to be too thin and the spine won't take the text. And she's like, actually, yes, that's exactly it. And so we start going back and forth like, okay, if we have the poems only on recto, it's going to look like we're padding it out. And we none of us want that. And we go, well, what if we incorporated the waterfalls into the interior such that it becomes part of the design and that is the pause? Because there's no titles. As we already said, there's no titles to any of these. Because in a dream, you just get plunged into the dream. There's nothing saying, by the way, here is your dream now. I'm sure some people have those, but usually you're just plunged into it. So as a breathing space, let's bring over this typographical element. Sorry, not typographical element, this graphical element, and use that as the pauses in between. And I'm overjoyed at the result that they came up with. So.
Yeah, it really is cool. I mean, as you read through, it's like the poems are disappearing and emerging through a mist almost too, in the way, and you do, you're in media race every time. You're just appearing in the dream and you kind of forget what was there before. There's like this, it's a really cool book laid out. I haven't seen a book like that before. Let's keep roll with the poem. Let's do another poem, Jeff.
Sure. Sorry, once again, I cut you off. I'm still getting used to the whole actual back and forth of the interview part.
No, it's great.
Okay, so I'm on page 57, and yeah, I'm only going to bounce back one time, so we'll just keep proceeding linearly. Tonight you are the only human on the plane. The other seats overfilled with things that are tall and covered in fur, jagged tusks and teeth growing from places they don't belong. You are tasty, you're sure, but they don't notice if you stay very still. You are rabbit still and rabbit small. You don't dare look directly at the greenish drool leaking from the mouth of the thing next to you, its arm almost touching yours. You are 30,000 feet from safety, trying not to exhale. The thing next to you shifts, and you know you'll have to prove you're not human. You bite down on your forearm, suck the blood up and choke it down. The rest of the things begin to tear at themselves, bellow and scream, then tear, tear, tear. You cower and recall the spell you taught yourself as a child. If I hurt myself first, they can't get to me.
Yeah, it's a haunting one from Jeff's new book. Yeah, these are the waterfalls in my head. Quick question. Shiv Preet Singh wants to know, how did you decide the order of the poems? Because you said there were a lot more and then you narrowed them down. Is there a linearity to it, or how did you figure that out other than not clumping things together?
Yeah. Three guiding principles. One, the first poem had to be the first poem because it sets the stage for everything. This idea of not being able to trust oneself, or to literally quote it, knowing you're the most frightening thing in your life. Two, the last poem had to be the last poem, and that'll be probably the last poem that I read here, and I'll have something to say about it at that point. And in the meantime, was just making sure that nothing was too close to other things like it. Mm-hmm. Varying the themes and this sense of not being too regular. I hope that answers the question, Shiv.
Yeah, well, it definitely does. Let's talk a little bit more about your background too. So one of the things that people have already asked and people have been wondering forever is why Jeff Stumpo with the two Fs, the two capital F.
Okay, and so this will be the most public that this information ever becomes. It begins with a gag. My signature is very stylized, and it kind of looks like there are two capital Fs the way I sign it. And a guy that I knew in college started printing it that way as a joke. And I'm like, I'm an experimental poet. I'm going to do that for real. And I just kept doing it. And my poems have almost all been published that way. My chapbooks were all that way. This book is that way. I have, I think, 3 scholarly articles in academic journals that are published with the capital Fs. About the only place I was not allowed to do it was my dissertation. When I got my PhD, they're like, no, we don't care how creative you are. You have to print your name the normal way.
Well, that's a great story. And people really have been wondering for years, I think. I know I have. I thought I assumed it was a slam sort of moniker type thing, you know?
No, although I'm definitely somebody who has not judged the people who are, when they bill themselves as like, I am Byron the poet's poet the third or whatever for their stage name. I don't look down on stage names because I have no leg to stand on.
Yeah. So tell us. I'm curious. You can hear the rhythm and the energy from slam in the way you deliver these poems too, and in all of your work. You have that performance aspect going when you perform your poems. Have you taken stuff you learned from performance and incorporated it onto the page? Or you mentioned being very visual. When you think about poems, but what elements from slam have you been able to make a part of your page poetry?
So this is something that comes up on this show on Rattlecast pretty regularly, the idea of musicality and something that it's not always important, but often important to spoken word is you don't have to rhyme, you don't have to have a particular meter, but there should be some sort of rhythm. And you don't even necessarily have to repeat things, but like having a beginning third, a middle third, and an end third, having some kind of sonic progression that people can latch onto, even if they don't understand exactly what you're saying. They might not get that metaphor, they might not get that reference, but they can be carried along by the sound of it. That's a fairly important thing to be able to do in spoken word, whether you're literally competing in a slam or if it's just the open mic portion and you want people to not order from the bar at that moment and pay attention to what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's hear another poem, Jeff.
Oh, sure. Okay. We are clipping right along. That's not a criticism, by the way. That's just me realizing that we're clipping right along.
It goes by fast. It does.
So I should have said at the beginning of things that like there are some content warnings in some of these things. We've had poems about mental health and we've had a poem about being pulled over by the police. And it's not till I look at this one that I'm like, by the way, I should warn people who haven't figured it out by now that there's going to be some disturbing stuff in here. This is a nightmare that I actually had that comes from school violence. So we're warning people now. This is on page 61, sorry. Tonight you are waiting for the elementary school children to cross when a man steps out of a van and turns the crosswalk into a war zone. You think this can't be happening very clearly and process the bursts of blood not clearly at all, and something clicks and you hit the gas, plow into him with your car. You're in shock. You think to yourself, I'm in shock. You're in shock. One of the children rises and the hairs on the back of your neck go up. That kid is dead, you think, seeing through the chest wound. Another child pulls himself to his feet, the top of his head a scene from a movie or a place very far away, but please, not here. They are standing and shambling and surrounding you. I've made a mistake, you think, and know you'll die. You know everything that is about to happen. Before they claim you, you just want to know if they have been like this all along, or if you are being punished because you should have done something sooner. The answer is standing just outside your door, shaped like a hole in a child.
Yeah, it's another frightening one. From, once again, these are The Waterfalls in My Head by Jeff Stumpo. And so these are intense poems. It's an intense read. It feels a lot of emotion and energy going on as you read through the poems. What you mentioned that the goal of writing these wasn't to help heal yourself. It was to get them external to you. What do you think, what is your thoughts on as far as the reader experience goes? Like, what do you think about when you think about the reader engaging with this collection?
I have a multi-part answer once again to that question. So as I've been asking you to bear with me, bear with me. One is that I have had a lot of responses so far, people going, that is horrible, that is horrible, that was wonderful. And they do identify sooner or later with something. But something that I've been saying at the readings I've been giving, there was the book release. I did a reading from the manuscript before it was accepted back in November, and I've got readings lined up for through the fall. And something that I say when I give the readings is that please feel free to put this down at any point. Like if you read something in this book and you go, that affected me, I would like to just process it for a while. I think that's perfectly okay. Like this is not a book where I'm like, yes, you must charge through this in one night and experience all of this pain and joy and maybe catharsis if you get lucky. Which, you didn't have a chance to do, unfortunately, but hopefully you're okay. By the way, it's not like trying to pat myself on the back for traumatizing people. I don't believe in unnecessarily traumatizing people, which brings us to readings, where I deliberately construct the arc of the reading such that the first third of it is just dream logic, the middle third is nightmares, and the last third is increasingly positive dreams, so that there is, in that literal Aristotelian sense, catharsis, where you descend and then emerge from the reading experience, having purged yourself as the audience to a certain extent.
Well, definitely, I assumed, you take a lot. There's so much that you think about when you're writing poems. We've seen that over the years. There's so much sort of behind the scenes, so many different angles and ideas you've got. So it's just fascinating to see them shaped in this. It feels like one, massive poem, in the same way too. And it's really cool to see, that creativity stretched out at length. What was it like, you were writing all these poems, but then you're writing so many other poems too. You have you mentioned other books too. You're writing a book a year. You got a hip hop poems, I know, going on. You've got the ones you've been showing, on the prompt lines frequently that vary a lot in different forms. Is it hard to transition between these different kinds of writing? How do you manage juggling so much different creative sort of energy?
I write best when I write in projects. And that's not how it is for everybody, and that's totally fine. That is not for everybody. I've discovered that if I say I want to work in a particular form for a year, so prose poems, trying to render things as dreamscapes for a year, because of my own mental conditions, my stamina is not always there to write for extended periods of time. So sometimes I need to just strike when inspiration hits. And I'm not a first thought, best thought person. No offense to Allen Ginsberg. The man had read like the entirety of the New York Public Library. His first thought was going to have a really good chance of being a good one. But there's a heuristic space, if I can use that term here, where you go, okay, I know that I've been working in this mode, and therefore it is easier to enter into that mode and take some of the unnecessary, I pronounced that weird, unnecessary cognitive load off. So I spent a year doing this, and then I spent a year writing, I'm an avowed agnostic, but I spent a year writing poems in which all spiritualities are true. So I'm writing a poem in which everything about Hinduism is true, and everything about Buddhism is true, and everything about like 15 varieties of Christianity are true, and so forth. And I could just return to those spaces more easily. There was a lot of research in the hip hop manuscript that I'm now at a point where I'm editing that and getting people to get eyes on it. But just sticking with a project for a year is how I write best, how I can come back to things when I'm exhausted and just don't have a lot of mental space left. Mm-hmm. I hope that made sense.
It does, and it's a great strategy, and I'm glad you found it, a strategy that works like that. Yeah. So, with all that, you talked about, wanting to have visual elements in your poetry, and then have in your performance poetry things that you could only do on stage. And there's a real drive toward creativity and experimentation. You mentioned, working under postmodernist teachers early on. Christine Hume, one of them. I've read one of her books, Musca Humana, which
Alaskaphrenia?
Maybe
No,
that's it.
Musca Domestica.
Musca
Yeah,
Domestica.
that was her first.
That's right. Yeah. I remember that, and I remember how she, like, most of the poems were, if I remember right, like footnotes and fragments underneath the poems, and you had to like.
That is part of what she was doing, where you could read like in line one, it would have whatever the line was, and then you go down to a footnote, and it's like, by the way, you can substitute this word for this word and this word for this word, so that the single poem becomes this multiplicity of poems.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of like experimentation and play like that. So what do you think draws you to that kind of poetry of doing the thing? It seems like you approach something and want to do the most challenging take on it almost, which you see on the prompt lines a lot, with you taking a twist and then adding 5 more layers to it to sort of challenge yourself creatively. Why do you think you're drawn toward that kind of experimentation on that degree, which is pretty impressive? I mean, the slam poem that you're most well known for, that ADDT or ADD TV.
You're right.
Poem.
ADD
Yeah.
TV.
Yeah. If anybody, people should go check that out if you haven't. There are videos, on YouTube of it. If you just put in Jeff Stumpo and ADD TV. But you use all different voices and switch channels and use sort of microphone technique for different sound effects and things like that, and visuals that you're performing. And it's a real performance, and like you said, couldn't be done on the page. So what do you think draws you to pushing boundaries like that so far, I guess?
Because I had schizophrenia present rather early in my life. And I'm not saying I've been perfect at any point in my life about this, but I've often tried to and had to think systemically. In the very early days, that's literally doing reality testing, making sure that what I think I am experiencing is what's actually going on. And then that has echoed out into my life in just, things like teaching or whatnot, going, okay, is what's going on an optimal way to be doing something? Is it an artistic way to be doing, like, systemically, what is happening here? I'll give you a silly example. When I was in college, my brother and I were working, I think it was technically third shift, doing quality control for this company that will go unnamed. And we were testing units, electronic devices. And it was very slow going and very inefficient. And one night I just sat down with my brother, Dan, because it was just the two of us in the lab. And I'm like, I think we can make this better. And instead of testing units for the next approximately hour, we wrote down how to redesign the lab so that you could test units more efficiently in it. And we came back early the next night. We get there, a couple hours ahead of time. And we're like, hey, everybody who's here, would you help us move the lab? And they did. And we literally like tripled or quadrupled testing output from that point on. Wow. And okay, so this is partly a humble brag, but it's also partly, because I've had to look at the systems of things in order just as a daily survival technique, it bleeds out into, okay, like, what's going on, like, structurally in a poem, and can I find out where the edges of that thing are and make sure they are actually the edges?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense too. For some reason I was thinking about that movie Memento.
Yeah,
where there were so many elaborate systems that the guy, because he had no there's a short-term memory or whatever. He couldn't remember things.
Yeah.
I guess it's short-term memory. He couldn't make new short-term memories. I don't know, it's been a bit since I saw it, but it's this elaborate systems he had to develop to figure out where he was and when he would forget over and over again throughout the movie. This book, These Are the Waterfalls in My Head. Do you feel like it's sharing the experience of schizophrenia? I worked as a counselor for adults with schizophrenia when I was right after college for a few years. And you know, the thing that it felt like most, just talking to everybody about what their experiences were like, was like dreaming while you're awake, you know, and the frightening thing about it wasn't like what necessarily they saw, but just the difficulty to distinguish between, you know, whether or not what they were seeing was real. Like that was the main source of, for most of the people there, the main source of the emotional distress was the fact that they couldn't tell the difference, you know?
Yeah.
And so reading this book, it's sort of, you know, blending in and out of that. Does it feel like you're providing that experience in some way for people who don't? And especially, it always annoyed me how poorly, you know, schizophrenia is represented in you know, in media and books and movies. You know, it never felt at all like what it was for the people I knew, you know?
Yeah. If I am giving people an insight into schizophrenia through this, it is a very, very insufficient version thereof. And that is not me trying to be humble or downplay how well I hope the book conveys itself as poetry. But as you just said, the thing about it that is disturbing and that drives people's fear is not that you see things that aren't there. It's not that you hear things that aren't there. It's not that, for me, it's proprioception. I feel things, not like a tactile sense, but like feel my body doing things that it's not actually doing. It's that you're not sure if it's real. Mm-hmm. You know, we see horrible things all the time. Alejandro's poem, like, you know, we've got like an assassination attempt and we're all watching and going, well, it happened again. Mm-hmm. You know, since the Vietnam War, we've had actual factual war footage, not even fake movies, actual war footage that we can view. If you grew up in a certain age of the internet, you could see things that I'm not even going to describe on the internet, in sometimes hard to get to, sometimes not so hard to get to places. Mm-hmm. But if you know that it's not, you know, it's not happening to you, you can separate it. And I think that this poem gives you insight into a mindset, but I don't think it lets you in that mindset because you can't get there. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it definitely does. Let's do it.
By the way, I ask that question a lot. I constantly ask people, does that make sense? I would do that when I was teaching college all the time. It's something that I get from therapy, that you know, making sure we're speaking the same language. Yeah,
well, definitely. And it makes sense to me. When people say that, I just wonder, you know, hopefully it makes sense to everybody else, because I can't speak for the audience, but I can, you know, I can say I'm following along and I understand completely, Jeff. Let's see. So let's do another poem, though. I want to make sure we move at a good pace to get through them all. And I should say before you do, though, if you're enjoying this conversation, please do click the like button. As is always the case, as Jeff knows, I'm sure he does every time he's watching. Click the like button. That helps poetry spread around. There's already, you know, twice as many people are watching that have clicked like yet. I don't even have to look because that's just always the case. Then it spikes up later and it's nice. So make sure you click the like button. Also, if you have any questions for Jeff, there's already some more in here I'll pass along, but put them in the YouTube. You know, Jeff's welcome to your questions, and I'll pass anything along. So put them in if you would. Put question all in bold. That helps so I can see it as I'm scrolling through. And yeah, let's hear that next poem, Jeff.
Okay. Do we want to do 2 more or 3 more? That'll determine whether or not I read this one.
We have time for 3 more, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure. All right. I'm going to get slightly closer to my mic for this. Tonight you have teeth growing out of your teeth. You're looking in the bathroom mirror as an incisor slowly protrudes from your incisor. You can feel your molars multiplying. They're beginning to grind against each other. They're beginning to slice open your mouth from the inside out. The teeth growing from your teeth are beginning to grow teeth. Your jaw is forced wide. You are full of teeth from your guts to your fingernails. Your teeth forcing their way out of themselves. You are trying to stay calm. You can't call for help because your voice is the scraping of enamel against itself. You tell yourself it's just a dream, but then isn't that what you said when they found the lump?
Yeah, that's another one from Jeff Stumpo's new book. These are the waterfalls in my head. Here's a question from Drya Montero, who, as you know, is Jared.
I'm going to ask you a question after this.
Okay. Jared wants to know, have you come to understand dream logic such that you could translate a waking experience into what it would be if it were a dream and vice versa? Or are your dreams impossible to reproduce?
I think that I have definitely rendered dreams that I've actually had properly in this where the dream logic holds. And I think that, for example, the one about the deer knocking on the deer as cop metaphor thing going on, that is very much a real thing that happens that I turned into a relatively successful dream. Wow, that's like the most simple answer I've given to any of these. Pronounce that one more time, because I think I've been pronouncing that liquor wrong my entire life.
Pronounce what? Sorry.
His name, Ted. His
I'm just guess. Is that Diamantino? Is how I say it.
Atiid. Okay. I had when we read that book that story in high school, the teacher pronounced it Amontillado or something like that, and so I've been pronouncing it that way. You're probably right. No, because I'm
just going by how my
for the love of God, Mansour.
10th grade Spanish teacher would have told me to pronounce it. That's all I'm doing. I didn't even know it was an alcohol. So maybe there's a lot of things you could do. I could see it could even be Dr. Yamantillado. That'd be fine too.
Oh, you got to start doing it now. Just a troll.
Yeah, exactly. And Jared just goes along with anything. I've been saying it like that for 2 years probably. I want to talk more. We talk so much about it's such a fascinating subject matter that you have going on in the book, but you're so creative with your poems. And I want to talk more about how you approach poems and how the process is. You mentioned, you have a lot of energy, to push forward and write for long sessions. And then you also mentioned that you're, not a first thought, best thought person. So what is your process like? How do you get to this? But there's so much music in your poems. There's always interesting concepts and ideas that you're twisting around and morphing. So what is your process like? How do you approach the blank page?
I swear this is not me being a wise ass. The pages never blank. There's was it Michelangelo who said it about sculpture that the sculpture is in the marble, you just have to find it. Mm-hmm. There is so much material out there about which one can write. The trouble is not coming up with something, it's reducing possibilities. That might not be a helpful answer for anybody in the audience. But I mean, like, I don't read as much as I used to because of the whole mental stamina thing. I read a ton of poetry. Long periods of prose have become difficult for me to read. But I still love reading nonfiction, and so at any given moment, I'll be reading something and go, oh, that reminds me, like two books that I did not write a poem about this, but just as an example, two books that I read in quick succession years ago. One was a history of tea and one was a history of opium. And reading them back to back, you go, oh, okay, so like a bunch of Vietnam vets got hooked on heroin because the British were running a trade deficit to China for tea. And that makes sense if you've read enough of the history of these things for it to make sense. And that's a very Zen statement. This doesn't make sense unless you've come to a point in your life where this makes sense. But there's always something to write about. The question is, I guess, is it going to be any good? And that's a much more difficult question. Everybody has joy. Everybody has pain. Everybody has their interests. The question is, can you turn that into something that somebody else will want to read or listen to? And that is a thing that I don't think we have time for, because that's like you can spend whole semesters or lifetimes, depending on your inclinations, working on.
Yeah, well, it's a great topic, though. I mean, what makes a poem good? And as far as, you recognize a poem, you see, it doesn't have to be your own, but it's good. What does that mean for a poem to be good?
And that's going to vary. I guess I will say more. That'll vary for every person. There's things that, oh, some people don't dig concrete poetry. And I think Silencio by, I'm going to pronounce the name wrong, but Eugen Gomringer, I think is amazing. And it's a concrete poem. So the center space in this grid is blank and it's surrounded by the word silencio. So the silence of the poem is actually the point where there is no text. And I think that's really sinking clever. Um, I don't know that it necessarily goes much beyond clever, except in maybe like a Cohen sense of like wisdom. Um, but also there's, great wisdom and wonder in a 40-page poem that, if you pick up Milton or something like that. Um,
Would you
yeah.
say like insight is the thing? I know because we talked about it over email about a poem you have forthcoming in the summer issue of Rattle that you're an Aram Saroyan fan. With that concrete minimalism, the light most famously, where the double GHs stretch the poem out.
Yeah.
And is it because is it intellectual like stimulation that you find most interesting in poems, would you say? Or, learning something that you didn't, seeing things in a way you hadn't seen. Is that what you're looking for, you think?
I do appreciate marvel. I do appreciate when somebody does something that I haven't seen before, although I try to recognize that that's often a matter of me coming into a new space rather than something altogether new being there. Um, my working definition of poetry is that it is language that enables one to be more awake.
Hmm.
No, that's the wrong word. That enables one to be more aware.
Yeah.
And maybe you're more aware of your feelings, maybe you're more aware of your thoughts, maybe you're more aware of a position that you hadn't been. And it is an active engagement. You talk about the difference between poetry and propaganda tells you what to think and expects you to just think that thing. And poetry wants you to think about the thing. Like maybe you come to the same position as the propaganda does. Like you can have both progressive and reactionary poetry, but it's trying to get you to actively arrive at that position rather than to just be told to go there.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and I,
Yeah.
and I think that is the vital thing because I'm going to go off on a tangent. You can't take politics out of poetry. Like in 405 BC, Aristophanes was writing plays about how they had to save Athens by going to the underworld and bringing back a poet. Um, Athens was at war with Sparta at the time, whole thing. So like, politics is going to be part of poetry. The question is, are you doing it in a way such that people are active participants rather than just passive acceptance of it?
Hmm. Yeah. Sort of along these lines, but a little bit of different take on it or track. One of the things that's great with the prompt poems that you do, Jeff, is there's always this, when you get a prompt, there's always this sort of way you can be sort of very literal about it. Or you can be like so clever that it's like too clever. And there's a way that you do a good job of like walking the line between the two, of finding the right sort of amount to, go with poems. And I wonder how you find that line of, how do you engage a prompt poem? I guess we'll just ask it that directly. You've been prompt poem of the month before, and we always enjoy your poems. So how do you approach it? Like, what would your advice be for approaching a prompt poem to find some line that's surprising and surprise yourself with it?
This is not me attempting to cheat the answer. This is just a generally good answer. The more you read and the more you listen to things, the better off you're going to be. Because the more examples you have, assuming that you're being a discerning reader or listener, if you're just like, at the open mic, and yes, we're supposed to support each other at the open mic, we cheer for everything. But you go to enough open mics and you start to get a feel for, oh, I heard those sounds, and those sounds do not do good things in my head. I've heard somebody do a poem about this subject matter 15 times in the last 3 weeks, and none of them are distinct from each other. So then you start to ask yourself, okay, what can I say that's a little bit different than this? Not for the sake of being different, but because I'd like to explore it in a slightly new way that I haven't heard done to death before. So I guess just, I'm 46. Even when I stopped writing, I was still reading. And so yeah, the more you take in, the more likely you are, assuming you're being discerning, to put out something that isn't cliche. So I would hope.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I guess we should do another poem. Let's do. We
Sure.
got two
Yeah.
left. Yeah.
Two left. Okay. I am jumping back in the book to page 51 to something that is a little bit happier because I'm going to close us out with two happier ones. And this is actually about flying. Tonight you are trying your hardest to grow wings. You are earthbound in a field and acutely aware of your shoulder blades. You are grounded in a meadow and pushing muscles out of yourself. You focus on pinpoints, imagine them feathering, fractal your back into updraft. Eyes open, you have no wings but find yourself floating just off the ground. You headstrong yourself an inch upward. You've never concentrated on anything so hard in your life. Another inch, another inch. You don't know how far you'll get, and it doesn't matter. Nobody gave you the means to persist, and even waking can't take it from you.
Yeah. That was another poem from Jeff's newest book. These are waterfalls. These are the waterfalls in my head. Given your interest in hip hop, which comes up a lot too, because you're working on that book and the slam poetry that you did for years, what do you get out of publishing books? That you don't, publishing spoken word albums too, which is something you've done. Why be a poet when you could be, a YouTube channel, or you could be, making music, you could be making your own hip hop? What is it that poetry does? There's one thing I can't remember who I was talking to, but I was talking to somebody who said that, they love reading books and poetry, but they really miss the immediate reaction of an, oh, you know what? It's not even a poet. It was Anita Franco. When I was talking to her in that interview, yeah. She said, I would be a writer, but I can't stand waiting to hear feedback from people, and I just want to hear the audience right away. And that's what you get in a slam. Not only you get all the oohs and ahs and gasps and snaps and stuff, but then you get a score too. I mean, it's that immediate feedback. It feels so different. It couldn't be any more different than publishing a book, over years and waiting for it to be published, and then waiting to see, if you hear back from anybody who read it. So how do you negotiate that big difference, first of all, and secondly, like what draws you to writing and publishing books anyway?
They're just they tickle different parts of my brain, or sometimes related parts of my brain. But I get to have my cake and eat it too. I write a wider variety of things than most people. Just straight up, like, I write formal poetry, and when I say I write formal poetry, I mean the hip hop manuscript is 217 pages, and I don't repeat a form in it a single time. And I write things that are prose poems and free verse, and I have a manuscript that I'm sending around that is largely vispo. It's like significant portions of it are visual poetry, and I just enjoy all these things. So like, I'm doing okay enough at any given one of them that I don't feel like I need to just dig down into it and never let go, if that makes sense. As far as the music, like, I have no music. I'm tone deaf beyond belief. I wrote a blues once when I was 16 for piano. It's probably more of a jazz piece than it is blues, but it's a little bit of a blend of those two things. But I can't read music, and I can't play music, and my singing voice is absolutely atrocious. I have my father's voice, and he was once asked by Japanese businessmen not to go back up at karaoke. So, and I say that with all the love in the world.
Yeah.
But
so do you do you miss the slam? I don't know how much of performance type poetry you do. Do you still find, we talked about this one time just on the prompt lines.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you still find places that have that kind of energy to reading, or is it more
Oh yeah.
difficult now? Yeah.
I for like a year and a half now, I have once again, maybe more than a year and a half, I've been a regular again at Slam Free or Die, which is the open mic and slam series in Manchester, New Hampshire. It's a good venue. Lots of love for everybody who shows up. Generally discerning audience as far as recognizing the difference between a poem that is performed well and a poem that hangs together as a good poem, regardless of if it had been on stage or not. And I'll I've been testing out things. They didn't see this because I hadn't come back yet, but they've witnessed like a bunch of the hip hop poems. They've witnessed other things that I've been working on over the years. And it is still nice to get that immediate feedback of, hey, like this is a place where we belong, and I get to come here every Thursday night or most Thursday nights and hang out and read stuff. And there is the immediate visceral feedback. This coming Wednesday, I'm going to be the feature at the Boston Poetry Slam at the Cantab. And I'm reading out of this. It's like one of the longest running poetry slams in the United States. But I'm reading these, and I know that they're going to respond pretty well to it because that audience digs this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Did that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And it's cool you can find those kind of venues and those places, you know. You mentioned the difference between, poems working as poems and poems working as performance. And I'm curious what your take is on the difference between those two things. Because to me, and I don't have an extensive, background in slam or anything. It was just 1 year I spent sort of exploring it and going to different slams and the National Poetry Slam back then. But it feels very diametrically opposed to me in a way I've never been great at articulating, But it does feel like like they're working it's like the energy is flowing in opposite directions. Like they're both very energetic, but it's like working on this very intimate level. And on the other, it's this collective, and so you're hitting on this like collective energy of all the hearts beating in the room at the same time, which is so the opposite of, the one person reading and the closeness of that or the quiet of that, and it's not even that. I don't know. There's a way that it almost feels like the opposite, the opposite flow.
This is the hardest one for me to articulate because I immediately want to push back against what you're saying about them being diametrically opposed, and yet I cannot fully push back against it. I think it depends in part on what the voice in any given person's head is like. For example, when I'm reading a poem and I know nothing about the author, the voice in my head is often that former Professor John O'Leary, who was a fantastic reader of his own work. Just fantastic. The guy was not a performance poet, but he believed himself to be in a long tradition of Irish bards stretching back literal centuries. And so you have to be able to entertain when you read, even if it's intimate, even if the poem you're reading is a love poem. And for example, I have a love poem for my wife called Love After Marriage that every year, round about our anniversary, I will go and read at an open mic somewhere. And the poem is very much for her. But just for that like 2.5 minutes, I'm kind of letting you into our marriage just a little bit and feel the love therein. And I don't want to say those are diametrically opposed, is where I'm slightly pushing back. But I agree with you that the energy is different if you were to read it on a page, or if I were to just say it to my wife, or if I'm not like performing, but I am performing when I read that for a group of people. I don't think that I answered that question very well, but it's tricky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know if I asked it very well. I'm still, I don't know. It's strange to me, but it does feel like it's the difference between partially like private and public, but there's like a collectiveness that I never in my life felt reading a book, like and like a rock concert or a spiritual, revival, a great sermon, they all have that sort of, it's like I guess what it is you lose yourself in opposite ways, with a page poem, you forget that you're reading a book and you're like become the speaker of the book, and it's their breath becomes your breath. And that's the intimacy that's like on this really personal, direct level. And then when you're getting a performance poem, it's that whole swell of everybody thinking the same thoughts at the same time, and it's like you lose yourself in the wave of the whole crowd and the performer all thinking the same. It's like some kind of like, I don't know, we had the Dean Radin interview, but some kind of collective unconscious warping, and you forget who you are. And I guess that's what the difference is to me, and maybe they can operate at the same time, but they feel so different.
I think where some of the difference is experience. And I'm not saying this as a criticism of you, but I'm saying it partly because you brought up that you were into the scene for like a year. People who have been in, and it doesn't have to be just slams. It can be any kind of performance poetry, whether it's like avant-garde performance or open mics or whatnot. But when you've been around that for a long period of time, you are experiencing it. You are allowing yourself to experience what you're going along with. But also you're critiquing, you're going, oh, I know why that person did that. You're a musician. And so when you're listening to, and I mean you, Tim.
Not really.
What?
I'm not a musician.
Are you not what? Wait.
Well, I mean, I play bad chords on the guitar.
Okay, but like when you listen to a song, are you not also questioning how that song is doing what it's doing on a technical level?
Maybe, but only on a poetry level, I think. I feel like you about music. I wish I could sing. If I could sing, sing and had a rhythm and, knew that my daughter is, I don't know where she gets it. She can hear a note and a chord and know that that's the, CM7 minor or something. I don't know, what the hell are you talking about? She doesn't need a tuner guitar, but I need all that, and I'm not. But poetry is where I get a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, I'm used to hanging out with people in spoken word spaces where they can be like, by the way, you've done your 3-minute poem. You get down, half an hour later, the event is over. I can tell you some of the lines that you just used, and I can explain in a technical sense why they had the effect on the audience that they did. I don't always know 100%, but like that is a skill that you develop.
Yeah. And
so you're doing that the way that a musician listens to another musician. And if you've ever, like, there's a documentary where it's one of the guys from Led Zeppelin and Jack White and The Edge are all sitting around playing guitar together. And they're like, one of them plays a riff and the other's like, oh, okay, I can do that riff. And then if I do it my way, it's like this. And they're just talking craft.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that definitely makes sense. Well, we're up on time, Jeff.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's great. Let's do the last poem, though, that we're going to share.
Okay. My quick introduction for this, and give me just a minute to do the introduction. This is what I end all of the readings with. So poems in the book have appeared in some solid journals, Prairie Schooner, Salt Hill, DMQ Review, places like this. But this poem I showed to my friend Amelia, who is trans, and she goes, "This would make a beautiful trans narrative. Can I put this in the zine that I'm making? I'm drawing it by hand, and there's only ever going to be 3 copies, and nobody's ever going to see it." And immediately I'm like, "Yes, Amelia, you can have this poem." And so this is now the last poem in the book, and it is not just a trans narrative, but among other things, it is that. Tonight you are in the right body. You know this because your mind is quiet. It's peaceful here. The earth is not trying to draw you into itself. You are not a dinosaur bone abject among the rocks. There's a muffled thought somewhere that you expected this moment would be all action, but instead it is defined by absence. No judge and no jury, no pebble lodged where it doesn't belong. You recall being Sisyphus. You recall the condemnation, but now you are free. There is a stone rolling down a hill, and you are walking the other way. There once was a God who said to you, forever, but that isn't your name anymore.
Yeah, great last line there to close out the book and the reading. Thanks so much, Jeff. For being
Thank you.
Jeff Stumpo. These are the waterfalls in my head. You can find all of Jeff's books at jeffstumpo.com. And find this book, too, with the link in the show notes. It just came out, so we're still working on the main link, but Jeff's got a link there in the show notes to pick it up. But if you're watching this later, it'll probably be just at jeffstumpo.com. You'll find it. Jeff, really beautiful book, really singular in the formatting and how tight and concise and focused on the topic it is, and creatively put together as a work of art. It's a really cool book. Thanks for joining us today, and I know we'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, so that was Jeff Stumpo. Like I said, find this book at jeffstumpo.com or that link that's in the show notes wherever you're watching or listening to this. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our invited prompt lines. And we're also going to announce our prompt poet of the month. And the prompt for this week was to, or this 3 days, you had to write it really. The prompt for these 3 days were write a poem which utilizes a quote as the title and indicate who said it within the body of the poem. That was your prompt for this week. And if you had submitted the poem by midnight last night, Katie invited she runs around 10 people or so to join and share their work, depending how long they are, trying to get a good mix of the best poems, but also different styles, different people that were familiar and that were not. So it's great to see new faces. So Katie's always balancing that, inviting people on. If you've been invited, you have the link. Join the Zoom right now, and we'll be right back with a whole lot more poetry. we're back. Thanks so much for your patience. I'm here with our creative editor, prompt poems editor, and my wife, Katie Dozier. Hey, Katie, how you doing?
I am doing great. I really enjoyed getting to hear more from Jeff Stumpo, finally. Been waiting for that episode for a while, huh?
Yeah, he's been a mysterious figure.
I
I've
know.
always been so curious. I mean, of course, he's so warm and engaging all the time. But I'm very curious
And
about
he's
him.
so innovative. He even ties his tie in a way I've never seen before.
Oh, that was the question. I knew there was one small question I was going to get at the end, and I completely forgot because somebody asked
Put it
in the
comments
chat.
what the tie was.
What the tie was
knot
called, yeah.
It's so cool. Yeah.
Anyway, so we have the unveiling of our new prompt poet of the month.
We do. Super exciting. And, I have to say this poet's going to have one of the longest reigns because it is announced so early in the month.
That is a good point. Yeah.
Yes. And the prompt poet of the month is none other than Shawn of Aveningo-Sanders. Hi, Shawn.
Hi, Katie. Hi, Tim.
Hey, yeah, great to see you, Shawn.
I love that
Great
we
to see you
coordinated
guys.
our outfits, Shawn, without even wearing red. That's exciting for us. Well, I love this poem, and I would love for you to start out with just sharing it, and so we can talk about some of why it's so awesome. So,
Okay, well, I'll just start off and read it then. A Tradwife's Tale. Nothing appeals more to a man than immaculate cleanliness. Eleanor Glynn, 1925. She was a dove cooing in a bathtub, nothing perfumed, unscented, best not to irritate, primped and preened and ready at dawn for a sink full of dishes from last night's feast. A helper for her would have been nice, but apparently hamburgers in more need of assistance. Despite all the ads she has seen on TV, she's never met that woman who is happy about doing yet another load of laundry. She'd fake a smile, add a scoop of cheer to her Maytag's maw, with an insincere shout out to Lipstick, his collar sporting a shade of red she never could pull off. Poppies, waking up in a daze.
well, Shawn, I love how this poem is both funny and then a real statement, I think, on our times. I hope that you're also getting paid by the many brands that you bring up in the poem, I assume. That's part of why you wrote it. I think it's just really brilliant. And so tell us about how you got into this from the prompt and what the prompt was, please.
Well, okay, so the prompt was to write a poem that rallies against your epigraph, which I thought was, well, that's a unique take on an epigraph because we usually use it the opposite way. But I really didn't know what I was going to do. And, I had seen all the Tradwife TikTok stuff, and I've also, when looking at images for like book covers or different things, I come across some stock images of like old vintage ads. And, you start rabbit holing on stuff, right? And I came into these articles about how to get and keep a man, back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. And I started collecting, writing down all these really just ridiculous, hilarious quotes. And I had like 3 of them that I was trying to work with. And, as I was playing around with the brand name thing and everything, this one was the one that kind of worked the best. And then, of course, I had to turn it into a Haibin because, I went to the Katie Dozier School of Haibin, and there it is.
Well, it's absolutely wonderful. It's really interesting too because we're so immersed in the story, and then it takes this dramatic leap. And I like too that with this Haibin in particular, we go to a darker place still within the poem body. With the lipstick that is not a familiar lipstick on the man's collar. And then that takes us that leads in really well to the big leap of the haiku, which I think can be taken in many different directions also, which of course is largely the point of a haiku. So
Yeah, well, what I love about it, it's a great poem on its own. and then the haiku is a totally different like it would work fine as a poem. It didn't need the haiku. And the haiku totally another level, it's really...
It is. And that can be tricky, right? Because we talked about, I think it was Lou Watts who said, you don't want to like double stick the landing, right? But this doesn't feel like that because we go to a whole different, like it gives a whole bigger scope, to use another brand name.
Well done.
Oh God. Brushed my teeth before this. To your poem, right? Because it gives it even more depth. And my favorite poems by and large tend to be those that are not afraid to be funny and, deadly serious, I guess, is sort of the thing that comes to mind, where we can get to a deeper place because we were comical. And you don't have to just be serious in a whole poem if you want to have a poem that has real depth.
Yeah, well, I think about how we use humor to buffer ourselves against really tough situations.
Yes.
So why not do that in a poem, right?
Yeah, exactly. So well said.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for writing this. And I wish we had the sash made for you to wear for the entire month of May as Prompt Poet of the Month. And then this will be the daily poem on Thursday, sent out to 25,000 daily poem subscribers, which if you are not subscribed, now is the time to sign up for that. First time I promoted that. I was proud of myself.
Yeah, good job.
Thank
Except
you.
Tuesday, actually.
Oh, Tuesday.
Besides for that.
I was a little too proud. All right.
Well, I'll be drinking a margarita and celebrating on Tuesday. And thank you so much for the honor and the opportunity to share a poem with so many people. So I'm really honored.
Thank you, Shawn, and thank you for everything you do with the Poetry Box, which is a great press. Everybody should check it out. I'm biased on that too, but they should check it out just a little bit. So, thank you, Shawn.
Okay, thanks, Shawn.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Shawn Aveningo-Sanders with A Trad's Wife's Tale, and that's your prompt poem of the month.
Yes, for all of May.
Yeah, very exciting.
Long may she reign.
All right, so the prompt, we'll go back to the prompt this week. However, we have a new week.
Do you think we've said prompt more than any person alive?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. Like don't the computer engineer coders have prompts all the time?
The prompt. They don't talk though.
That's true.
No, just kidding. Okay. Okay.
Okay. So the prompt for this week, though, was to write a poem which utilizes a quote as the title and indicate who said it within the body of the poem.
Okay.
Okay. So you did what, Katie?
So this was, I wrote this as one of the, I think it was like the penultimate poem in our Hyben Crown that we wrote last month. Not this month anymore.
Yeah,
Not
the month
a
of
present
April.
tense,
Yeah.
the month of April. And so we worked it into this. This gives life to thee. If we can do anything with words, then why can't we do anything with the world? All the butterflies that landed on me first spread their wings in a fantasy. I was a minor island for years before I spotted a hill I didn't know how to reach. But that's the thing with floods of speech, awash with the appearance of everything being over just before the mud recedes. Imagining no rain, sensing the scent of every magnolia blossom returning to the exile of its own small fist. Instead, the honeysuckle of our kiss. Can you believe all of this? We exist. A request for eternal lines.
Yeah, I love that Dozier coup at the end,
Thanks.
which you had to explain to me. But I do like
What I love about Hyben, though, too, is I feel like you can get a bit more esoteric with the haiku if you want when you've given, like, I think a holdable poem.
Yeah, definitely. It's the same
rest of
thing like
it.
we're seeing with Shawn's, It's a
Yeah.
whole other level, and
Yeah.
you get so much out of that. Love the last line of the poem body, too.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, so it's Katie's poem.
And I did cheat a little bit because I don't explicitly say Shakespeare, but I feel like we can get there. We're poets.
Yeah.
We can know Sonnet 18.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think people get it. Yeah.
Okay. They get
Okay.
it.
And I did not come up with a poem this week.
Wah,
I
wah,
tried-
wah. A nothing
Yeah.
burger.
Nothing burger. A blank page for me. It was, putting together the new issue of Rattle for the summer. It's a lot of fun work, but it was a lot of work. And I'm
Well,
tired.
don't you worry because we have an amazing invited prompt lines lined up tonight with really cool takes on the prompt that were really exciting to read.
Well, I'm excited for that. And do we have our community host here with us? We do. Dick
We do.
Westheimer is
He
in the
is
house.
here.
I am here and I'm looking at all these faces that I don't recognize. It's just
Yes.
wonderful how both the invited prompt lines and the community host space has folks I haven't seen before. I love how it's expanding the community.
Yes, I'm very excited.
Probably not the community of people who've been writing prompt poems as much as the ones who want to read them with the Rattle community. So, yes, so I'll do a quick plug. The date is the 31st. Katie has promised me she doesn't hate me much for doing that much. Again, the transcendent and challenging Francesca Bell will be our co-host, and just looking forward to it. I wish I could do it every week.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. A quick comment on my poem. I don't know if I would send this out to another journal with the quoted title line at first. I kind of like the second title better. But I'm not sure. So I'm still, reading it out loud will help me better understand how it works. And you'll notice I too sort of cheated a little bit on the calling out the poet. And let's see if you can figure out who it is.
Uh-oh. A pop quiz.
I think you might get it. Love is strange and almost always too late, or a Benedictus of stink bugs.
Well, yeah.
And one note, stink bugs are new to the U.S., like in the last 15, 20 years. They are not a thing that's been around. They are an invasive that came in the aughts and started spreading in the teens. So anyway, enough of that. Benedictus of stink bugs. I am fortunate to live in the age of stink bugs. How at night they find my computer screen, how their queen, having slunk under my eaves one day last winter, bred her brood of stink bug princelings, sat on her stink bug throne in the corner of my writing room, and waited until she spied me late one night when the house was stirred only by the sound of my wife's slow breathing, the rise and fall of her under a single cotton sheet. And just as I was to type the line that would wow the poetry editor at the New Yorker. There it is. That queen of the stink bugs sent her best begotten son to smack its brittle body against my screen. It incited a sacrifice worthy of some stink bug Christ, some Mashiach, some chosen one. I cracked his carapace between my thumb and desk, and its smell, like gas released from Dante's hell, like incense from some mephitic censer, anointed my room. The queen sent more of her kind, knowing she's given of herself, and granted the whole of stink bugdom absolution for their sins. Thus it came to pass that the New Yorker declined my poem, and I no longer write late at night, and instead lie by my wife in our lightless room of love and skin and quiet rustling sheets, and repeat our vows, now 5 decades old, as if they were new.
Oh, sweet turn there.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard to say you shouldn't pick the title that includes stink bugs. When given the opportunity, stink bugs not a bad direction.
Yes, but and I will admit that I got into the poem, and the poetry editor at the New Yorker was in the poem, and then I went, I need to go find a quote from the poetry editor that fits the poem, or fits so far in the poem, and that sort of prompted the turn at the end. So there we go. So it all works.
A cheat code to the prompt. That's great. And I think you bring up an interesting point though too. One thing I think that we need to do more of, and Tim and I have talked about like trying to do this on a critique of the week in the future too, is looking at how once you have written your prompt poem, like things that you might change for getting it published elsewhere, or just improving the poem regardless of publication. So yeah,
that would be an interesting to do a prompt poem critique session. Something where you brought some of these good poems forward. I'm not insinuating mine is, but bring some ones of like folks that have some promise and figure out how do you refine them.
Yeah,
that'd be terrific.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again for everything you do, Dick.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks, Dick. That was Dick Westheimer with Love is Strange and Almost Always Too Late, or a Benedictus of stink bugs, and definitely put your
team stink bugs.
Stink bugs. Yeah,
Come
put
on,
your
guys.
vote in the chat.
Vote it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited about tonight because we had a record number of new face submissions, I want to say. And so we have a really exciting lineup tonight. I'm really excited.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and keep moving along, and let's go to Carly Mickabee.
Hi. Thanks for having
Hi.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
So where are you calling from, first of all?
I'm in Fort Collins, Colorado,
Oh.
Right.
and just read my poem, right?
Sure. Yeah. And then we'll chat. That sounds great.
Okay. It's called Borage is Not What I Expected, and I should mention that it is the title of a Reddit thread. Borage is not what I expected. Mrs. Molly from Reddit saw the blossoms shaped like blue stars on the seed packet, the promise of pollinators, and planted the whole envelope. She imagined butterflies and bees buzzing above a canopy of green and stars. Then the stalks grew so thick and prickly, she went to her local greenhouse for advice. A grower told her borage will come back year after year, like dandelions, brash and unwelcome. Now it's overcrowding her eggplants, and she isn't prepared. She expected wildflowers, something to wish on. Instead, an herb with an ugly-sounding name, borage, like a dirty word with a fat, sharp stalk. One Redditor tells her it's edible, eaten to bring courage. Another makes it into a cucumber-flavored drink. Someone calls it fantastic, suggests mulching it into something called green manure. Once, like Mrs. Molly, I saw it all. A garden, future children climbing an oak tree, sitting with my love on a patio, sipping juleps and watching the butterflies. One person's nuisance, someone else's gift. When the borage sprouted in the pollinator garden, I plucked the blooms from the stalks and froze them into ice cubes, made gimlets full of little blue stars. It's what we don't expect that keeps us believing in joy. At some point, we've all put our faith in a seedling that turned out to be poison oak. Tell me, who among us has not?
Well, I really enjoyed this poem, and I have to say, first of all, how creative to think to go to Reddit and pull your quote from Reddit. Like, that's amazing. How did you get the idea to use Reddit for this?
I don't know. I feel like anytime I am curious about something, I garden. I was working on another poem that, my poems are really usually very heavy, and I need to step outside of them sometimes. So everything always sends me to Reddit, and then you go down the rabbit hole of Reddit, and that was literally borage was not what I expected, and so then I went down the drama of the Reddit description of borage, and there you have it.
I love the way too, like the idea of actually thinking about people who are giving advice on Reddit as humans giving advice on Reddit, right? Like there's this like slight like tea party aspect to the poem where it feels like everyone's like sitting there trading advice, which is not, how Reddit normally feels. So I thought it was really entertaining because of that too.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming. It was great and really wonderful to read this poem.
Yeah, very cool. Thanks, Carly. That was Carly Mickabee with Borage is Not What I Expected.
Also works well if you don't know what borage is from the onset, like I didn't.
I
was like, I don't know what to expect. We'll find out together.
It is. I love learning in poems.
Yeah.
It's always one of my favorite things. Let's go next to Dolores Hayden.
Delighted to be here tonight.
Oh,
Hi, Dolores.
yeah, thanks so much for being here.
I'm in Guilford, Connecticut.
Not too far from Jeff, actually, I guess.
No, Litchfield is just the other corner of the state.
Yeah.
Town I know well.
Well, Dolores has a poem that is the subject is one of my favorite games, so I'm very excited to hear her read this.
Interesting. Okay.
I think many people will know this game. It's one of the richest player wins. So the title of my poem is I Listen to Money Singing. Thimble and Shoe are stuck in jail, throwing the dice for doubles. Flatiron borrows on a Baltic lot to buy the Reading Railroad, while racing car roars right past go, picks up 200. Hat collects the Park Place rent for a one-night stay in her ritzy red hotel. Thumbs bills, hearing a line from Philip Larkin. Here comes the Shoe and Thimble too. They're out of jail now, but Thimble's riding the Reading, complaining Flatiron's fare will finish her. And here comes Bank, who writes the mortgages, hustles your ascent, auctions your fall. He transacts the practical and volatile business of capital. Money sings. And watch out for Mr. Monopoly. He's stepping up in ancient spatterdashers, wearing top hat and morning coat, twirling a cane, puffing a fat cigar, performing wealth as operatic solo. Money hums.
Oh, that's a fun poem. Yeah, it makes me definitely want to play Monopoly.
Yeah,
It
definitely does.
Get the board out right now.
I love
greenhouses and red hotels and all those little pieces.
I love the whimsy of this. And then also too, I have seen Monopoly comes up in poems, but I've never seen, the characters, the actual factual Monopoly characters. And it's there's a really interesting way in which humans are behind that, but we don't care about the humans in this poem, which is so interesting. So I really enjoyed this trip down to Boardwalk, where we're trying to come up with some puns really fast, but they're not coming.
No free parking here.
No free parking here. No, it was a really great, really creative take. And I mean, also having a Philip Larkin quote in the middle of Monopoly is just hilarious and makes it infinitely interesting too.
Yeah.
His poem and mine are in pentameter, so there is a link.
Lovely.
Very cool. Well, thanks so much for sharing that,
Thank
Dolores.
you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
That was Dolores Hayden with I Listen to Money Singing. Okay, next let's go to Alina Kalantarov.
Hi, Tim and Katie.
Hi,
Okay.
Lena. Great to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. It's my first time here. I'm so excited.
Great. And where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Long Island, New York.
Great.
So my poem is titled, I used to think I was scared of heights, but now I know I was just scared of gravity. And so let's begin in the middle of the free fall, suspended as we are by the cables of time. All in all, the earth has been a good teacher. From mountains, we've learned to saddle our weight and tip our hats to the sky. The rivers, jungles, deserts, on and on. We have never been parched for metaphors. Take the body, a universe flirting with limits, and the heart that wants so much to love this place, floating as it is between the first and last breath. Or the finches I sometimes watch through the window on my lunch break. Watch them climb and clamor against the safety grill, the entire sky incredulous behind them. I think it's strange, a bird angling for a cage. I think if given half a wing, I'd surely fly. But where then would I put my fear of falling? Wise man Reed flew all the way around the moon to see. Turns out the sky keeps all her worries in the ocean. Perhaps the waves could carry me, buoy this old burden. But on the brink of every sea, tossing her blue hair at me, I grind my toes into the sand, as if to say, I see you, great expanse. I think I'll stay.
Well, Well, I think that there's so much to love about this poem. And the first thing I have to compliment is definitely, I love the line break on, "We have never been parched for metaphors." Like that line just hit me. I think it may have actually influenced the prompt that I picked for next week too. So
Interesting.
you'll have to wait around and see that. But I really loved that line break, and the line breaks throughout the poem I thought were really excellent in particular.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And if it wasn't obvious, this was inspired by a quote by Reed Weissman, who was the commander of the Artemis II mission. I know that mission gave poets a lot of fodder this past month.
It sure did.
Yeah.
A little too much for me, honestly. I gotta chill it for my own stuff. But that was great too. And with us not knowing that to start and then the turn to it at the end, it was almost like, we were so like lost in the poem that we'd forgotten about the great quote that you titled it with, but then we got to go back into it. So it was really nice too. And I hope that some of these astronauts get to see these awesome poems being written about it. Like we were trying here on Earth, right? We were doing
We're trying. I hope so too.
Great.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thanks so much. It was
Thanks.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, that was Alina Kalantarov with "I used to think I was scared of heights, but now I know I was just scared of gravity."
It's a
That is
great
cool
quote.
It
Yeah,
really
it's
is.
a great
Yeah.
quote.
Yeah. Okay. And let's see. We'll go next to. We'll go next to. Let's go to Mike Bales next. It's been a bit for Mike.
Oh, there, I clicked on the microphone. Nice to be back.
Yeah,
Hey,
great
Mike.
to see you, Mike.
Yeah.
Double pleasure. I did karaoke earlier. Now I'm here.
Yay.
When I was in high school and college, it's like move on, move forward. Now I'm very much tying into roots of mine, like this with uncle's farms on my mom's side. And about 20 years ago, I was following Philip Levine a lot, so I followed him for this poem. It's a quote of his. The poem's called "Some Things You Know All Your Life." I walked through a farmer's market on a summer day in a small town. The setting may be different, but I've been here before, walking past the displays of corn on the cob and produce, always on Saturday in a park. I recall a poem, Simple Things, by Philip Levine, where a woman sold him potatoes. Much like a mother, she said, eat. Crops raised by a farmer's hand are laid on the table each summer. To me, the story is the same. The husband works the field while the wife cooks in the kitchen, like the times I visited my uncle's farm. The farmer works in fields helped by sons. Year after year, he tends to lands to pass on to his eldest, an act of love. A housewife at the market I meet shows me a watermelon raised, a moment shared while her husband tends their plot. Sun and rain grow the crops so familiar.
Yeah, Mike, I've been interested to ask you too. So you've submitted a few Hyben as of late. What's got you into Hyben? Because I thought you were one of the people that's been with us for a long time on the show, and I didn't think you were going to get into Hyben. I thought you were one of the standouts. But lately, I think you've joined Team Hyben.
You rubbed off on me. No, I think one thing that changed things totally, and I sometimes feel very dependent on it, is when there's a Rattlecast prompt saying invent your own kind of poetry. Mm-hmm. So then I did combine braided Hyben with the sonnet form, and I had that 15-line form that's called off sonnet. And now I just kind of like that. I kind of like a poem within a poem, them kind of rubbing against each other. To me, that's the metaphor. It's up to the reader to decide how it is for them. But crazy me, I almost feel pretty dependent on this form sometimes, and I go wild about it.
Well, you and me too. Me also, Mike. I really I can say that for sure, so I can relate. So thanks so much. Former prompt poet of the month, Mike Bales. We should say too.
Oh yeah, that was a big moment under the sun for me.
It was great poem. Everybody should go check it out. We have all the former prompt poems listed, the prompt poem winners on there, and Mike is one of the early ones. So
Yeah.
Do I say the month? August 2024?
nice.
go,
Nicely
nice.
done.
Things like that you don't forget.
Oh, great.
Well,
Thanks, Mike. Good
thanks
to
so
see
much.
you.
Yeah, it's great to see you, Mike.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, take care. Yeah, it was Mike Bales with Some Things You Know All Your Life. Next, let's go to Emily Pedrosia.
Hi.
Hi,
Thank you so
Emily.
much. Hi. Thank you so much for inviting me here. I'm super grateful to be able to read for you and all of the listeners here.
Oh, great. Well, we're so happy that you could join us and that you're here with this really beautiful poem.
Thank you. This poem was written after a fragment in Audre Lorde's poem Litany for Survival, and it's titled We Were Never Meant to Survive. I was born of soft bullets. Some days feel smooth jade against my rib cage, cold with morning, and imagine my abuelo cloaked in smoke, chilled fire, fighting for a nation, a flag that did not love him back, and my cousins, warped hands, trembling, holding black metal to each other's heads, tongues already cherry wet. To love someone is to promise to follow wherever they end. We were born from peanut marzipan and crumbled skin, and instant coffee curdled sweet milk, nothing made to last. Audre Lorde says we were never meant to survive. I think this when I press a kiss against my abuelo's silken head, so faint I could taste salt and damp earth, bitter heartbeats, find what it means to stay alive, battle for each sharp breath.
Well, Emily, in this poem, I was so taken with, this is a very serious subject, and yet the choice of this soft language and how it allows us to access more depth, because there's this juxtaposition between the lightness and the softness of your words, but then it allows us to get so deep. And I also think that the formatting and the way that you allowed for such extra negative space gives us that room to breathe around the words and to breathe more weight into them. So I really loved it. And I was curious, when you first wrote this, did you come up with this sort of formatting and spacing and stanza breaks like immediately, or was this something that you played with a lot?
Yes, I think it was something that I kind of played with, as you said. There was the negative space, like you mentioned, and also I think with the fragmented stanzas, I wanted to almost mirror the shape of bullets across the page.
Oh, wow. I didn't get that, but it makes so much sense now that you're saying it. Wow.
Thank you.
Well, that's really fascinating. I'm glad I asked, because I would have been sad to miss out on hearing that, because that's really impactful. I love the concept of, really trying to embody the shape of things that serve as metaphors for what we're writing about too, and the subject matter of the poem, and to really put it out there like that is part of why I think it can affect you on a subconscious level, right? Even me not knowing that it was the bullet is probably somewhere. I like to think some part of my brain that wasn't able to say it was picking up on that. So really beautiful, Emily.
Yeah, very cool. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
Oh, and I forgot to ask, where are you calling from?
Funnily enough, I'm also calling from Connecticut.
Wow.
I'm calling from
Wow.
New Haven.
Wow, we should have done the show from Connecticut.
Definitely, we
tonight.
should. That would have saved
Yeah.
some Zoom fees. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being here. Yeah.
Thanks. Great to meet you.
Thank you so much. Great to meet you guys.
Yeah,
Bye.
thanks. Yeah, that was Emily Pedrosa with We Were Never Meant to Survive. And next, let's go to Megan Werwer.
Hi, Megan.
Thank you for having me on.
Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, and where are you calling from? It's a lot of first-time callers.
Don't tell us Connecticut or we're going to fall over.
That's going to be a little scary.
No, far from Connecticut. I am calling from Tempe, Arizona.
Okay, we are going across the country now.
Yes, we've flown over the flyover states. We're in the Southwest now. Okay, so my poem is called "The Creative Adult is the Child Who Survives." Wrote Ursula K. Le Guin, according to t-shirts and motivational posters and everyone but Ursula herself. An adult is not a dead child, but a child who survived. Does not look quite as nice on a teacher's wall. We prefer our dead children neither seen nor heard, haunting our goodbye kisses and lunchbox notes as we zip up bulletproof backpacks and scroll past award-winning photos of excavators preparing mass graves for schoolgirls cloaked in white. They linger at the edge of every mother's conscience, carrying ghostly hall passes with the unfinished business of becoming.
Another great ending there, too.
Yeah, it definitely is. I thought that, it was definitely a very haunting end to your poem, and also a bit of a lighter start. And yet we go to such a deep place in such a short amount of time, which really heightens the impact of this poem. And I thought it was, just really interesting, too, thinking more about the things we're quoted as saying that's not what we said. And, I don't have anybody saying things on T-shirts, but there's some things, you can get misquoted.
She had actually, when I stumbled across that this was a misquotation, actually, she said, "Did I write that? I hope not," which I think is so funny. And so, she described it as a box of elder beetles. Once you've been misquoted, there's no coming back from that on the internet.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate, but I think apt metaphor for sure. I think she would be happy to see herself set straight in your poem. So there's that. You're doing justice on that level as well with this poem.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Thanks. Great to meet you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Good to meet you.
Yeah. There was Megan Werwer with The Creative Adult is the Child Who Survives. And next, let's go to Holly Thompson.
Hello. How are you?
Hi, Holly. Great.
Yeah.
How are you?
Thanks for being here.
I'm doing well. I'm calling in from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. It's a little bit past my bedtime, but I'm being extremely brave about it.
Thank you for staying up late with us. We're glad.
And this is a poem called No Disrespect. No disrespect. At the gas station, Amos said, "Ma'am, no disrespect." And I thought, I don't want to do this. Amos appeared in my vision, big as a god, left eye embellished with tears, approaching me, no disrespect, needing a shirt, a belt. So we took a turn to the road. He was living in a home, but they disrespected me, and I believe it. Amos needed to smoke. It's okay, I vape. We crossed while passing bodies left, a leper's distance between us. I told Amos that I understood. I used to drink too much. Amos had given me no sense that he used to drink too much. I can't remember now. Feels like we shook hands or hugged.
Well, I thought that this was, such a moment filled with empathy. And I was really curious how you thought, to quote Amos and to come about writing this poem.
I think I had the idea for this poem written down because this was based on an actual encounter that I had. And it was an encounter that I kept thinking about, and I really wanted to center him as the figure in this poem. And I thought that this felt like a very kind of me approach to this week's prompt to do a quote that I just sort of heard in passing. I've been very interested recently in these poems where there's a speaker who is sort of trying to make a gesture of kindness, trying to do a good thing, but is still also being very deeply human, is still kind of ambivalent about the encounter. They don't do it quite right. I've been really enjoying kind of writing that recently.
Well, I love how you put it that you wanted it to be like a me take on it, because that's what I want everybody to be doing all the time. Like, what is the prompt poem that only you can write? That's what I think results in the most interesting poem. And I also have to say, I thought that the way that the title at the end of the poem for me took on the meaning of no respect, from the speaker of the poem to Amos was really interesting and transformative.
Yeah. I thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And hello to your cat, too. We see a little cat popping up. Always love a cat cameo.
We do.
They're behaving right now, relatively, and I'm shocked by that. I thought they were going to be meows when I was reading. I thought it was going to be, no disrespect from them. Yeah.
Well, thank so much, Holly.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Holly.
Great to meet you.
Yeah. That was Holly Thompson with No Disrespect. And last but not least, let's go to Heather Kays.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful and honored to be here. I'm so excited. I'm trying not to be like a starstruck weirdo.
No, it's so great to have you. And I've gotten to read, I think I can say, a few of your poems and so it's really wonderful to see your face especially. So I'm likewise really happy.
Okay, I'm just going to jump right in.
Great.
As the spirit wanes, the form appears. I tape those words above my desk at my first newspaper job. Cheap particle board desk, ancient desktop humming like a tired refrigerator, coffee gone cold by noon, editors walking around with grammar in their teeth, and safe little stories lined up like obedient children. As the spirit wanes, the form appears. Bukowski wrote, and I understood. I looked around at all the polished nothing, clean copy, clean collars, clean little lives trimmed down to fit whatever box some dead man built before any of us were born. All form, no fire, no hunger, no beautiful wreckage worth writing down. But mine was a wild thing, half feral, half burning, refusing to sit pretty or shut up or learn how to make myself smaller so hollow people could feel whole. I always knew what Bukowski meant when he wrote about the bluebird in his chest, that soft, frantic thing, beating itself bloody against the ribs, begging to live, begging to sing, begging not to be buried alive under routine and approval and polite applause. I kept mine alive with claws, with stubbornness, with a woman's rage, the kind sharpened young on disappointment, on monsters who mistook silence for weakness, on full rooms who wanted me lovely but never loud. I chose loud. I chose strange. I chose the crooked road, the hard sentence, the truth with dirt under its nails. Because if spirit dies, all that's left is costume, a body walking around in somebody else's idea of a life. And I would rather be unruly, unwanted, half broke, ink on my hands, heart split wide open, then beautifully shaped and empty inside.
Well, Heather, really enjoyed this poem. I could, first of all, I have to say, with grammar in their teeth. Oh, I love that. When I hit that line, it was like one of those like, oh, I wish I had written that. That's brilliant. Like, what is it? Like, you can just feel them wanting to correct you or something like with their teeth, and it sinks in. I think it's a really brilliant metaphor there. I love that. And then also, I could just relate so much to, I have had very few real jobs, so to speak, but my first job was as an intern right out of college at this center that was a nonprofit, and I felt like, oh my gosh, like, wow, I'm supposed to conform and pretend like I'm normal. Whoa, what is happening here? And so I felt like the same kind of fire in me, I could relate to that. And the use of anaphora, I love in your poem so much too, because it becomes a sort of manifesto that we can all get behind and really believe in. So I really enjoyed it, Heather.
Yeah, really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, it so authentically explores the topic too.
Yeah.
It's like keeps digging deeper and deeper at it. Yeah.
Which Bukowski would love too. So
Definitely.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, thank you. I've been enjoying the prompts so much, and this one is the one that came the easiest for me, which I think is funny after over a year of agonizing over every word that I send to either of you. That this one I just knew what quote to use, and it all just sort of flowed out naturally. But I think that there is a thing that happens back when I was young, 18 years old, at this newspaper job. What I saw as a disadvantage and what other people tried to convince me was a flaw or a problem or a shortcoming actually ended up being what made me different and therefore made me better. So I think that that's a good thing to share with people.
Well, that's wonderful. I think there are a few things that are as important as that, and that's one of the things I hope to exactly what you're saying, to help people deal with more and to embrace who they are. Because, like I was saying, I want like everyone's version of that poem. Like what we should be writing, I think, is what only we can write. Right? That's what's most exciting and what we can offer. So, thanks so much, Heather. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Heather. Yeah, that was Heather K. with "As the Spirit Wanes, the Form Appears." That's going to wrap up the invited prompt lines for tonight. Been a lot of fun, a lot of new faces.
I know, it's really exciting and so many different takes. And yeah, it was wonderful.
Yeah, and let's see, we have a haiku to do. Let's do a haiku.
Okay.
What'd you get for us, Katie?
Let's find out.
Let's find out.
Okay. It's not about that prompt poem.
Well, that's an interesting one. With definitely a lot of prompt thoughts going on.
There are some prompt thoughts going on. This one for me is first, it's, you know, how when you start off in a prompt and it ends up not really about that, but then at the same time, sometimes it is about something, and somebody will ask you like, hey, did you write about me in that poem? I'll be like, no, of course not. Of course not. That wasn't you.
Believe it or not, with all these like prompt lines and talks, I don't know if I've ever really thought about, or it's not sunk in, that prompt also means this quick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't even think about it. The word takes on a new meaning. Yeah. I know it is funny. When you use a word in a singular way over and over again, it loses the other meanings almost.
Yeah, and you can kind of read it into this haiku, though, that way, which is cool.
Yeah. Well, hopefully.
Yeah, well, definitely. All right. So that's Katie's haiku. And then this is mine. This is inspired by another tree. It's like 2 weeks in a row we got trees, because we got a tree that's like, this loblolly pine leaning more and more as I grow. Loblolly pine leaning more and more.
That's the kind of the one we have to cut down.
That is, yeah.
I don't want to cut it down. It's beautiful.
Know. It is beautiful, but okay. Yeah. Anyway, that is my haiku for this week. That is the show this week. Now, next week's prompt is going to be...
We are going to consider your most controversial opinions and boldly write a poem about at least one without apologizing for the stance. Include a fresh metaphor.
That's gonna be an interesting one.
Yeah, I'm curious how controversial people will really get.
I know. Yeah.
You know, are we gonna hear a bunch of fake controversies? I hope not.
I prefer peanut M&Ms.
I just think, I don't know. I think we need to do better about disagreeing with each other.
We definitely do.
And I want to work on that. Like, we don't agree with everything. Even you and I, we
That's
don't
true.
agree on everything, fortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The spice of life.
Oh, God. We agreed that was a bad cliche.
It was.
Okay.
So anyway, that is your prompt. Consider your most controversial opinions and boldly write a poem about at least one without apologizing for the stance. So you see, don't apologize. And don't apologize in your preamble, too.
No.
Just don't even.
Just own it. Yeah. We're all friends. We have differing opinions. We will survive.
And also include a fresh metaphor.
Yeah. Which is going to be way harder than everyone.
That's probably...
But there was... I say that, and then there were so many tonight.
There were.
The invited prompt lines.
Really
and fresh metaphors are so rare. There were so many.
Yeah, very cool.
So I guess that's doubly hard for the featured poets on the invited prompt lines tonight, because they just came up with a banging fresh metaphor. And they need another one for the next prompt. Like, no rest.
Well, maybe it's a muscle. It's a little stronger.
Yeah,
Lift a little bit more metaphor next time. Yeah. Okay. So that is your prompt. The guest next week is going to be Luigi Coppola. Now, Luigi is a fascinating poet. We've published him a few times, and always really interesting. He does a lot of visual poetry. He does video poems. He performs. His newest book is Even God Gets Distracted Sometimes, and it's illustrated by Mark Shuttleworth, an illustrator. Each poem is. So Luigi is a really interesting person. Looking forward to that. And note the special time. So Luigi, we wanted to have him as a guest because he's such an interesting person for a long time, but he's in the UK. So that's like way too late to do a regular Rattlecast time. So we move it up to 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. So a daytime, afternoon show.
Fun.
Much fun. Yeah, with Luigi Coppola and that prompt once again. And that's going to be the last of the Strange Times, hopefully, for a while. We had a Thursday one. We had a Sunday one. We have an afternoon one. We're sliding back after this, don't worry, into Monday or Monday nights. And we got some great guests. We got Lisa Wells, the postponed Rattle Poetry Prize winner. We've got Robert Wrigley, the Tufts Award winner, a great poet there. So looking forward to that. And then looking forward to some great episodes. But next up is Luigi Coppola. Again, Monday afternoon, May 3rd. No, wait. May 10th.
Today's May
I screwed this up again. Oh, see, I'm doing too much at once. Okay, so everyone's just going to wait. I'm just going to fix this, but you can all go to bed. But I'm going to fix this just because for like a second, every time you play both on Facebook and not YouTube, but Facebook and X, it shows the last image before it shows the first. You'll see, and it'll flash the wrong date. And I don't want it to flash the wrong date, so I'm going to fix this.
Neither does anyone else.
Nobody wants it to do this, yeah. But I was so focused on the time change that I forgot that the day also changed.
It's okay, honey. We all forgive you.
Okay.
We do, and it was a great show. It was so fun to get to hear from Jeff Stumpo and hear more about him. And Jeff's been a real part of the Rattle community for quite a while, and he is one of the most innovative poets out there, I think. So it was really neat to get to hear him. And I have to say, I'm jealous of a poetry book with poems printed too, and the way that those are, because I would love to be able to print a book with just the poem on the right side. I love negative space around poetry. It gives it room to breathe. It frames it more like the artwork we know that poems are.
Yeah, definitely. So, we're doing it.
They're going to think it's a hot mic situation. This has gone on for so long.
Well, it worked last week. We got a lot of people.
Yeah, everyone heard you embarrassingly complimenting Dante DiStefano. It was the real controversy.
I mean, when I screwed up the slide last week, it was also it was a highlight.
You got many emails saying they loved this part.
I loved when you
I feel sad that anyone's listening to us right now. I'm sorry.
Well, anyway.
Okay.
There you go, like magic, it eventually fixed.
Oh, I don't think that's how magic works.
Okay. Well, enough of this. Good night, everybody.
Good night.